All right, everybody. So I'm going to talk to you about chapter 3 of the book, Friday Night Lights. The chapter is called Boobie. Of course, Boobie was the star running back who took over for Sean Crow. He replaced Sean Crow after Sean left. So it begins talking about how great of a back Boobie was and some of the games that he had, like, running for over 200 yards, 80-yard runs, 60-yard runs. And then before the 88 season, which this book is, the movie and the book was about, Boobie blew his knee out in a scrimmage, not even in a game. So that was kind of like the beginning of the chapter. And that was such a disappointment for Boobie because football was like his thing. That was his main thing. That was like the thing that he loved the most was football. And without football, people were wondering, like, what is Boobie going to do? What would Boobie be without football, basically? The chapter also talks about his uncle LV, and it talks about, how the town of Odessa and was kind of like segregated back then. And his uncle LV grew up in a part of town and went to a school, basically, I guess it was like an all-black school, basically. And the whites went to another school called Crane, I believe. And where LV went to school, his uncle, they didn't have football. They only had basketball. So he never got a chance to play football, even though he thought he would be a great football player. The only time the black students got a chance to even watch football is when they would sneak and watch the white teams play. And they used to dream about playing. So that, like I said, the towns were kind of segregated. So basically, LV adopted Boobie. Boobie was like in a foster home, and LV adopted him like around the age of 7. Then it talks about how, they had to make a connection. He built a relationship with him. Their connection was football. He put Boobie in the Little League, into the Pop Warner League and things like that, and they were able to build a rapport that way. A very close relationship. Okay, it also talks about, how Boobie, what he was thinking about, like when he was in school. I guess he was a special ed student in special ed classes. So he was like behind on his classes. Like he was taking classes as a senior that some kids at Permian took as freshmen. He also, a lot of the players, I guess, felt like he got preferential treatment because of how good he was. Quite frankly, they say in the chapter, a lot of people were upset about how Boobie was treated, but nobody was as good as Boobie. So if Permian was going to win games, Boobie was going to be a big part of it. So he was getting, that's not something that's probably different than a lot of teams. He was getting special. He was getting kind of like preferential treatment. One coach was asked what Boobie would be like without football. He kind of gave a response that, he'd be a big old, and used the N word. Okay. So towards the end of the chapter, it also talks about how Boobie was getting all these letters from colleges and stuff. Like he was getting letters from everywhere. And because of Boobie being behind academically, he was going to have to be a Prop 48 candidate. So a lot of colleges shied away from players like that back then. Okay, at the end of the chapter, it talks about how one doctor told Boobie that, it might be a 4-week, his knee might be 4 weeks. It might be 10 to 14 days. Another one said 4 weeks. The trainer thought he had seen knee injuries before and thought this could be something that could ruin Boobie's career. So everybody was kind of worried about Boobie because they were wondering what would Boobie do without football. That was like his whole existence. What would he do? So that's kind of like what the chapter was about, chapter 3. If you're from Odessa, or you went to Permian and you played with Boobie, you're one of his teammates, or you know something about him, or maybe you're a relative, give me some comments. I want to know what you have to say about this. That was chapter 3 of Friday Night Lights, entitled Boobie. Thanks.